Everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. With this video, I'll be reviewing the DM's Guild supplement, The Book of House, designed by Willy Abeel, along with Natalie Barillaro, Steve Barrett, Max Churak, and Chris Diggins for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links for your DM's Guild shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. Shout out to my platinum patrons, Andrew, Brian, Richard, Joe, and Will, and gold patrons, RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy and Yuma, Marcos, David Vicente, Gilberto, Sean, aka Cert2B, Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, and Alkshi. Thank you all very much for your support. By the way, real shout out before I switch over to my regular screen. Excellent work at providing a press kit from the designer. It's absolutely amazing. I actually got a Google Drive link to proper widescreen formats, which I could use on my new. Because previously I've had to, not to go on a rant real quick, but I get the cover and I have to put that, and you kind of have to format that with the YouTube thumbnail, and you have to put that on one side, and then I kind of have to jury rig my own little custom banner, which is fine. But if you can provide an actual press kit to reviewers, which hopefully there are more and more of us now that do reviews, on YouTube or outside of the actual DM's Guild website, I suppose, or in addition to, it's very, very nice to have. Obviously, I can take pictures myself. That's not a big deal, but if you can provide that, it really warms my heart. That speaks to your maturity and your professionalism with putting your product out, and that says a lot. And I appreciate that, so that's why you got a nice fancy. You know what? I'm gonna go back and show that real quick because look at that. I mean, that looks really nice having this fully. I had to add, my stuff on there too, obviously, but it looks really, really good having that kind of cool widescreen format on there. All right, I just wanted to say that. The Book of House is basically a Xanathar's Guide to Everything style, kind of all-in-one compendium, which is, I think, can be a tough sell on the DM's Guild because a lot of folks enjoy the a la carte aspect of the DM's Guild, where you can search for a specific thing that you want, whether that's a single player race or a new adventure of a certain level requirement or some kind of new mechanics that you are adding. And that way, it's like a buffet table. You can go in and kind of just select whatever pieces that you want from the DM's Guild. So when you create these giant compendiums that are a little more expensive and create kind of a lot of things, you're probably going to end up with people purchasing stuff that they might not end up necessarily wanting. Now, the good news is the Book of House, you can purchase all of the new races and the new subclasses separately, which is a very, very nice gesture. In fact, I wish a little bit more had been piecemealed out to give those options. I do really enjoy this compendium. I think it is very well done. The artwork alone is some of the best I've seen. Really, really incredible. I think the new content that is provided here, which is if I can run down, I believe it's 5 new subclasses, 4 new player races, 10 magic items. There are new 5 backgrounds. There are new magic, I think a dozen new magic spells, and then new rule sets. There's new options for lycanthropes. Just a lot of stuff that's all told from the perspective of this one character called Sir House, which actually has a cool kind of beginning and end to it that I wasn't expecting in terms of who this character is, and you find out more about them as the supplement goes. I think it is very well done, but when you're purchasing kind of like this, you have to realize that you're going to end up. I think it's a tough sell. I think these bigger compendium books that just kind of include a little bit of everything are just a tough sell. Xanathar's, Wizards of the Coast can obviously put out something like that because people will buy whatever Wizards puts out. I do really like this book. I would recommend it with the caveat that you need to know kind of what's all in there, and if you're going to use enough of it to make it worth it a purchase, which, hey, that's why you're watching this review. So let's go into what do you get with the Book of House. Already mentioned what you get. Lots of races, subclasses, new lycanthrope shapes, I guess, options, as well as mechanics for using lycanthropes with player characters, which I like because I think that the monster manual, hints at the fact that obviously that's a thing, and whenever a lycanthrope which I'm using that term interchangeably, and the book even correctly points out that the word lycanthrope, specifically, lycan for wolf, this just applies to any kind of were creature, anything that could be appearing in a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comic or episode or something. I like that there's new player race mechanics involving how that works, because I think the Monster Manual really glossed over like how does that actually work. That's chapter 2, and then chapter 3 is a lot of, I guess, DM stuff. So the spells, the items, and some new ability types, as well as a few, not really new monsters though. It's really what we get are like sample monsters of the new like races and lycanthropes that we're given. Which it's nice that we get those stat blocks, but it's not really a monster manual. So I think the Xanathar's comparison is very apt here because it adds mostly player stuff with just a little bit of DM stuff. Clowns is honestly in fact I think it's one whole chapter, is devoted to clowns, and again they're repeated later on because you also get all of these backgrounds are clown specific, and then obviously one of the race stat blocks is clown specific. So I mean, this is almost a 100-page compendium, and there's probably 20 pages devoted to this new clown race. Now you might be wondering, all right, clowns as a race, that's pretty weird, right? Yes, it's pretty weird. And I was about to eye roll, but then I just started reading about it, and it's really good. It's really well thought out. It's fascinating. It's interesting. The artwork is really good. They have 2 specific different kinds of clown styles. One of them is kind of the the theater kind of clown, where you've got that classic mask. It's more angular looking, and then you've got the kind of more rotund comedic clown. And it just works really well. They actually act as a race, kind of. I think they're even meant to draw from maybe the like Barovia, which I think is where Sir House is supposed to be from. They're given their own. I mean, look at this. You get trade, military, education, language. They get their own little clownish language, which is all kind of seems like thieves' cant in a lot of ways. And they're not just like jackasses either. They're defined by the fact that they can do everything, but none of it particularly well, which mechanically means it's sort of a jack of all trades, the bard ability, but it's just that they can't have any skill below. I think if it's a 0 or a 1, then it becomes a 2, and if it's below a negative, I think it becomes a 0 or something like that in terms of their actual mechanics. But you're giving a lot of detailed information. There's different kinds of clowns. There's different clown religions, which one of them took me until the end of it before I realized it was literally juggalos. This is the Gallo brings carnival, which is the god of parties. And it's a gathering of Gallo, and it's just all of that is obviously a reference to Juggalos, and it was really funny, but it's done in a really serious way that speaks to this being like a straight up like deity and his festival that these clowns worship. And I think that's, I don't know, I was expecting this to be just a really dumb, stupid thing because you're starting with clowns as a player race, which is kind of dumb and stupid, and it's really treated very seriously and well done. Like, it's very well written. There's a lot of detail here. I was really impressed. There's sample characters provided. Just the artwork. Man, the artwork is so good throughout here. As I said before, this has some of my favorite artwork that I've seen in a DM's Guild product. It's all character art. I don't think there's any. There's not a whole lot of any kind of monster art or environmental artwork. It's almost all of it character art, but the character art is just fantastic. Really, really good. Just throughout, absolutely incredible. So this whole first chapter is just clowns, and it's really well done. Like, this is just a background information on clowns, and way more than we'd ever get on, I think, any of the races in the player's handbook, which is fantastic. And then it officially adds them as an actual stat block here, where they can elongate or balloon up their bodies. They literally have like rubbery bodies. Their ability. Okay, here we go. Ability checks with a modifier of 0 or +1 before adding proficiency bonus are now a +2, and you ignore any negative skill check modifiers. Now, at the other end of that, you don't have any ability score increases. So you're not particularly like min-maxed. You're just literally not super shitty at any one thing, which is an interesting way of adapting the, I guess, clown concept of being able to, do all these kind of tricks and things, and necessarily not be, I guess, super great at them in terms of anybody that's a profession of them, but you can just do all these things, so that's kind of interesting. Other than clowns, we do get 3 other player races. Gnolls, which I'm kind of surprised is not already a player race. I thought they added this in Volos. I meant to check that before I did the video, but Gnolls as a player race, it kind of borrows from what the author later does with the lycanthropes, which is at a regression level, which is every time that you hit 0 hit points, so you fall unconscious, you have to roll a wisdom saving throw, and if you fail, you gain a level of regression, which is kind of like a system of exhaustion in that you can keep compounding it. And you suffer either some kind of madness, or at the very final level, level 3, you go completely feral. You literally lose your character, and at the DM's discretion, they either become hostile or attempt to flee. I don't necessarily like that as a maximum thing that you lose your character, but I think a modified version of this is definitely something that I've been using with, like in our Tomb of Annihilation campaign with the Zaka, the Were-Tiger, in that you have control over yourself, but then you can lose control on certain moments. And I didn't treat that one with necessarily saving throws because she's an NPC, more of a role-playing opportunity. Just a plot device is that she can just become, like, enter a feral, full-on were mode, which is kind of similar to this. This translates that into different kinds of madness. I would just have it be like you temporarily lose control of your character rather than you're building it up to completely lose control of your character, which kind of sucks. But it's also pretty hard because I think you cure regression every time you long rest. As long as you're not going down to 0 hit points multiple times before you long rest, which I don't think most player characters are, except unless you're playing a fairly difficult campaign, then you should be okay. But it seems pretty well balanced in terms of translating a Gnoll into a player character. Like I said, I do like that regression level. You're definitely hardier. You've got dark vision, immune to poison condition. You can subsist on spoiled food or garbage. When you get below half your hit points, you enter into a rage mode. Your AC is reduced by 2, your speed is increased by 10 feet, and you gain a +3 bonus to damage rolls and melee attacks. Wow, that's real powerful. It almost seems too powerful. Just lower than half your maximum hit points. All of a sudden, you deal an insane amount of damage. Yeah, your AC is reduced, but I mean, you're not one person. You're in a party of people. So that always is going to be, I think, in the player's favor, unless they're in a situation where they're just surrounded by baddies up there, which I guess could happen. But more than likely, I think a lot of players would trade AC for more damage in a lot of situations because there's multiple people being targeted. You're not the only one, whereas you're dealing damage, presumably every turn. So that seems fairly powerful. And it's not even a per thing. It's you return to normal, the condition is not in effect. That just always triggers, which is nuts. Sprite is the third race, which is a very cute little art. This one is weird because they have to balance the fact that you obviously get a flying speed and you're tiny, so you can fit into interesting places and get around a little better. However, you have a -1 to all your attack rolls, and you have your hit point maximum is decreased by 1, and you gain 1 less hit point every time you gain a level. So I do think that is some interesting balance. You're just a lot physically weaker. So obviously I think making a Sprite Spellcaster would be ideal, but I would love to see like a Sprite Barbarian as well. And they have certain different subclasses based on how well ingrained they are with the Feywild and the Seelie Court. I am seeing so much stuff about fairies in the DM's Guild. Wizards has got to put out a freaking Feywild adventure or something, because there just seems like there's a lot of need for something that has to do with the fairy court and the Feywild, and using all these sprites and pixies and the summer court and the winter court, the Seelie and the Unseelie, all that stuff. People seem to all know way more about that than I do, and I find it all very interesting and fun, like in terms of the politics and drama of the fairies. I would really love to see an official Wizards of the Coast adventure that expands on that, the same way they did kind of the different region like Barovia. I would love to see more of that, just to go off on a rant here, but Sprite seems very cool. Tulas are spiders, humanoid spider people, which is kind of I am not a big spider fan. I kind of don't like them, and this is a very cute humanoid spider, so I'll give them that. And they've got climbing speed. I love that there are both the kind of tarantula style, the hirsute, versus the glabrous, which are more just the, I guess, non-hairy spiders. And they have very different abilities, too. They have different kind of speeds on climbing and walking. One of them can use their hands to make an extra attack, while the other one can use their hands as an extra way to cast spells. One of them can shoot a web, while the other one has a poisonous bite. So it doesn't have an all-in-one. Like, you don't have all the spider abilities. You kind of have to pick and choose which spider abilities you want based on which subclass that you want. So that seems a little better balanced, and just seems like a really neat exotic character that people would probably kill on sight if they could, because fucking giant spider wielding an axe, at least in this picture, Seems rather terrifying, so more so than a lot of monstrous humanoids. That would seem like it would be a mention there. But I think that's a fun concept for sure. Subclasses are really fun for the most part. There's four that I like and one that I think is kind of lame. Um, the culinary bard is fantastic. I love the Guy Fieri style artwork here. It's just great. It's exactly what I would picture a D&D style war chef, let's call it. And this speaks to the fact that I think a lot of bards get a bad rap as just a weird, fighter wizard hybrid, which is basically what they were through most earlier editions of D&D. Honestly, I think non-D&D RPGs, a lot of them treat bards a lot more interesting than D&D does. So the fact that this one speaks back to a bard as being a pure support class and like a buffer of the entire party is really cool. I like that. And they can prepare dishes during a rest, kind of the same way that bards can do like a song of rest and heal everybody. This time they can just prepare this dish and essentially give a massive buff to everybody. Suddenly the bard is everybody's friend. And the way they level up with the subclass is you can then mix and match different meals and give different bonuses. And eventually you can make everybody a snack, which they can consume as a bonus action and lasts a minute to literally gain like a battlefield effect during the battle. And you can use all of these by spending, I believe, Bardic Inspiration to do all of these. So that's also a good resource and use of it. I really think that's neat. That's a flavorful. I think it's a very flavorful subclass that speaks to the bard as being a good buff and support unit. It's pretty funny that you're sitting there like cooking all the time. The fact that you can like make a snack and then or make a meal at like during the party's previous rest. Dole all those things out, and then during the battle, everybody's got these extra things they can do rather than you just singing a song and giving everybody one thing that they can do at that moment. So I don't know. I think that's a neat idea and a lot of fun. A new monk subclass, Wear of the Caretaker. I am picturing a bodyguard, or like from the Gotham TV series, the Alfred, for Batman, from that more military style Alfred. Essentially a monk who's purely protective and defensive of their allies, which is interesting. Maybe not the most fun class to play because a lot of people want to be their own, hero, but you could spend an action to essentially just protect people, even like teleporting over to them. Oops. And then eventually at level 17 you can make copies of yourself, and which is kind of a funny way of the fact that you've got this suddenly army of butlers now. Ranger is pretty neat. You gain traps that you can spend equal to a number of your wisdom modifier. The enemy has to roll a wisdom saving throw, and then you ensnare a trap in their mind, and then that triggers whenever they do something. This really reminded me of the Hearthstone secrets. I haven't played Hearthstone in probably 3 years, but this is what reminded me of. Whenever you could cast a card spell and it was a secret, and that secret would trigger upon multiple different things happening depending on the secret. One would be like if the enemy cast a spell, or cast a creature, or if they healed, or if they did, whatever effect, that's what would trigger the secret. Otherwise the secret would just stay in play. This works very, very similarly. You cast it, they have to fail a saving throw, and then you implant this trap, which you can choose, I believe, 3 of them at 3rd level. And then from there, you gain more eventually as you level up, and they become more effective as you level up. My only problem with it is it seemed, and it's funny because the Ranger is often seen as the underpowered class, these seem a little underpowered given that they first have to fail the saving throw for you to implant it, and then you have to wait until they do the thing that triggers it. And it says when a mind trap is set, your target is aware of its conditions, which means the target would know that they need to not do that thing to trigger the trap. So all of those things means it actually seems very hard to get this trap off. So either one of those things has to give, which I think it'd be really fun if the target wasn't aware of its conditions, like the Hearthstone secret. The problem is that means you are keeping that information from the DM, and then how do you stay honest about that? You could say like, okay, I'm casting one of my traps, one of my mind traps. The DM knows you've got 3, or depending on what level you are, prepared, and it could be one of these things, but you might not know which one. Well, you could do one of those, and the player could say like, oh, well, it was that one, without the DM knowing. So you'd have to have some way of keeping the player honest with that, maybe writing it down or something. But I think it'd be more fun if that was hidden information to make it more effective. And I think they need to scale a little bit better. For example, the attack strike, whenever the target of this strain attempts to attack, it takes 1d6 psychic damage before its attack. Now, a lot of creatures would probably say, well, whatever, I'm going to attack anyway. And the DM would be like, well, whatever, my creature's just designed to burn out and deal damage, regardless, especially if it's a monster type. Now, that is an ongoing effect. I believe it stays on the target and does not require concentration, so maybe it's more effective than I think, but that doesn't scale up until level 11, at which point everything doubles. So at 10th level, it's only an extra 1d6 psychic damage, and that's if it attacks, and that's if it failed the saving throw to have it implanted in there. So I don't know. It seems like a really, really cool idea. I like the concept, but I feel like it is currently underpowered, given all these different limitations and their overall effectiveness. I do like the way that a lot of them stun, and I mean, it's a really neat idea. I like the effects that they can move and get stunned, or they fall prone, or something happens. But I feel like they should either be secret, and or they just need to be a little more effective, or maybe I don't know. Something's just got to give there. It just feels a little bit, a little underpowered, but it really seems like a cool concept. And balance is a tough thing for me to comment as somebody that's just reading through this. Obviously, I haven't played this, so I have to always defer that the person who designed this, went through a lot of play tests and ran through it, and maybe they know this is how you balance it. But just reading it on paper, it feels like this one's a little underpowered, but a neat idea. The Merchant reminds me of a lot of like Final Fantasy Tactics style classes, where there was always just had some funky classes. This one has an interesting way. It's less about like role-playing opportunities and more about translating you using gold in combat, which makes me think of gambler style classes in like a Final Fantasy style game. And especially at let's see, you gain 5 temporary hit points, and your movement speed increases by 5 feet anytime that you gain money, which is going to happen all the fucking time if anybody plays D&D. That I know of, you're always gaining loot until your next short or long rest. You pretty much always have that benefit. And then you can essentially buy advantage with money, which seems very abusable, but there is a limit in that the cost of this ability is multiplied by 10 each time you use it. So it costs 1 gold to declare advantage, give yourself advantage for 1 gold, which I think everybody would take unless you're level 1 and have nothing. And then after that, it would take 10 gold to do it a second time, and then the third time is 100 gold. Now this resets on a long rest. So it seems like that does scale fairly well, except I would imagine most people would probably stop at 2. That's 11 gold for twice advantage, which still seems very powerful per long rest. And then at the really wealthy upper levels could even do it like 3 times per. That's interesting, like a very, very useful rogue ability. Later on, you can even buy better sneak attack dice. It seems this one almost seems overpowered, given how many times that you can just give yourself advantage and how useful advantage can be. But I also think it's pretty flavorful. It's a funny way. You also get like a stash that you can draw money from. You've got a lucky coin on you that gives you charisma checks. All of that is pretty cool. I like that a lot. The only one I think is pretty lame is the Sorcerer Residual Magic, which is really just a Wizard Light. It's kind of a weird combination of Wizard and Sorcerer. You get to pick a spell school, kind of like you do with Wizard, and then you get a certain new meta magic that has to do with whatever spell school you took. It's just not really exciting and just feels like it's just a weird hybrid of a Wizard and Sorcerer, and I don't really need my Sorcerer to be more like a Wizard, so... but I am very positive on the subclasses and the races in general. There's a lot of really good content in there, and those are all the ones that you can buy piecemeal, by the way, separately on the DM's Guild. Lycanthropes is always a cool subject. I think they're a lot of fun. I love my anthropomorphic creatures and characters, and they offer a lot more options here first, which is really fun, and they also offer new mechanics for player characters that I think more effectively balance out what it means, because I do think the Monster Manual left a gaping hole in like what it means to be a player character afflicted with were-tiger, werewolf, or whatever they had in there. This one offers that same regression level that you saw with the gnolls. That has to do, and different lycanthrope shapes actually have different DC saving throws. So some of the more exotic, crazier ones will have a higher save that you have to make against that. But again, it only triggers when you hit 0 hit points. I would have liked to see this expanded even further, kind of like what I do, what I've flirted with a little bit, which is having it be maybe every time you get hit, or if just a big, you take a critical hit, or you suffer some kind of big emotional thing. I would treat it like a young mutant in X-Men or something. If you just have a big emotional trauma, then that would trigger your transformation or something. And then when you transform, you most likely lose control of yourself, and it's DM control, but then you have to make a saving throw to determine if you still remain in control of yourself or something. So I like where it's going. It's not exactly what I would use, but I like that it's trying to rebalance lycanthrope. So you're not just given a straight up like super powerful, because it's just written in the monster manual. It feels like it's just all benefit. Like why wouldn't everybody try to be afflicted with lycanthropy? Because you just get this new powerful, crazy good form. You become resistant to like non-magical weapons. It's just you're just godlike right off the bat. It's crazy. We also get new shapes, and they are quite exotic. You've got your standard were-rat, were-tiger, were-bear, were-wolf. New ones you get were-raven, and were-boar is a standard one. Were-squid, were-octopus, were-wasp, and were-shark. And I fucking love this picture of a shark in a tricorn feathered hat with a little what do you call it, frilly thing sticking out. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Really cool new wear shapes. They all seem decently well balanced. They all increase and decrease ability scores, which seems appropriate. Obviously, the right ones gain swimming speeds. They can all inflict lycanthropy back on people. The squid can shoot out an ink stream, which is the darkness spell, which is great. The octopus can grab people with its tentacles. The were-wasp has the aggressive trait, which I think is... I don't know if that's seen in wasps or not in the actual stat block, but you can move up to your movement speed. Hostile creature. Sharks have blood frenzy. You know, it just draws from the actual creatures from the monster manual to create these new lycanthropy forms, which I think is a lot of fun. They're a lot of exotic. It seems really interesting. I like these a lot, and I'm a fan of lycanthropy as it exists in fantasy worlds. I think there was a cool gap to fill with lycanthropy. I hate saying that word, lycanthropy, in D&D. I feel like the only thing missing here is this should have been one of the separate supplements that you could purchase along with the others in case you really just wanted this, because this has nothing to do with like clowns or anything else. This is just its own separate supplement, but it's a really good one, and I like it. This is a preview copy, by the way, so I still have some works in progress. I'm not sure, but there's a lot of art in here that's only pencil art, so there's no color. I don't know if that's still a work in progress or if that's supposed to be the final art. I'm not quite sure on that, but this is a preview copy that was given to me earlier before this actually released on the DM's Guild, which is why you're seeing stuff like this. New feats are mainly tied. There's not a lot here, but they're tied to just a few on the new races. So the Tula race can detach their limbs. The clowns gain a few more feats, like adding their charisma and all that. Backgrounds are purely for the clowns. Here you can have your official Juggalo character, you can have a mime performer, a rodeo clown, priests. All those are specifically for the clown. So when I said that, like, you know, it's 100 pages and probably a fourth of this book is devoted to the clown race, that's where it is. It's kind of spread out throughout the book. So if you're really not at all interested in this clown race, I don't know if the Book of House is going to be worth it, because 25% of the book is devoted to clowns. But I will say, give the clowns a chance, because it's really interesting stuff, and I enjoyed reading about them, and I think it's really well done, really well detailed, and well thought out. The magic items are very well done. A few of them seem like they would match together with the clown theme, with magic mirrors, magic needle, magic umbrella that can cast it's a darkness spell. Underside is a cloud of magical defense, unaffected by sunlight sensitivity, or it functions like a spear. It seems like a cool clown weapon. And in addition to Mr. House's actual gear, which I love. This is a cloak where you can fire interdimensional darts, kind of like a magic missile cloak, which seems really cool. And amazing art, again, amazing art throughout this entire thing. Every single magic item is given artwork. Not even the Dungeon Masters Guild has artwork for every single magic item. Granted, there's only 10 here, but still, I would love to see this designer and this whatever team up of designer and art what this is to make even more magic items, because I really, really love this section, and really fantastic art that really helps magic items come to life. I cannot stress that enough. If you got a magic item compendium, give me art. It's so good. New spells are okay. They're not terribly exciting. They're not dull. They're just kind of okay. I feel like spells is one of the least needed things in D&D, because every single supplement, every official content has added spells. We just have a ton of spells. Some of them do seem a little tied towards using clowns, which is good. Charade, Appear False, Instill Doubt. These could all be kind of clown-specific spells, which is nice. I have no earthly idea what this is. This is gibberish. This is some kind of hidden code. I don't know if the designer is watching this. Just tell me what the hell this means. I do not get any of this. This is a little 2-page thing of written in code. I am completely lost. Combat considerations. This is, I think, the weakest part of the book. They provide kind of like Xanathar's, where there's some DM notes on here, but none of them seem particularly useful, or they're either kind of obvious in terms of like how do you rate, DC levels and things, or it's, hey, these are different actions you can take if you find yourself not being able to do enough things in combat. If you find yourself not being able to do enough things in combat, you're not thinking outside of the box in D&D. As a DM, I would recommend players, uh, you know, I think there's a tendency to decide, well, I look at my character sheet and I can either attack, I can move, and I can attack. If you're like a low-level fighter, for example. There's so many things you can do in D&D. You can talk to people, you can, lock doors, you can try to start an avalanche or start a fire, or, a lot of these things that you wouldn't, especially coming from like a video game background or something, you wouldn't think to do because you can only do, what it says on your ability sheet. But in D&D, you can do whatever the hell you want. It's up to the DM to decide if that works or doesn't work. And I think 5th edition, more than any other edition, does a good job at baking in extra character abilities as you level. So yeah, if you're level 1, you might not have a lot of things to do, but by the time even you're level 3, I think everybody's got a good amount of stuff they need to do, and I don't think you need to add a bunch of fiddly extra actions, like, what is it? You declare a melee weapon after using strength. You can take a -5 penalty to the attack roll to then make the target roll a strength saving throw, and then push the target up to 5 feet away from you. That's like a spell-like effect at that point. I think that gives you a little too much ability, and yeah, you're taking a -5 to the attack roll, but that really feels like something you would do in 3rd edition because of all like the feats and abilities you could do there. And I think powered attack does exist in D&D 5th edition if you use a feats, but even if you notice, feats are a variant in 5th edition. Like, they don't even really want you to take feats necessarily, because they even think that the basic feats in the player handbook are a little fiddly. So to go above and beyond that for here is not something I'm looking for. I like how streamlined 5th edition is and doesn't have a lot of these +1, -2, modifiers. All of that just gets in the way, in my opinion, in my review, my opinion. I would rather things, you can do things. If you describe a thing and do it, I will roll, have you roll a check, and then that thing is going to do either advantage or disadvantage, or the thing will happen with a saving throw. I don't think you need these hard and fast rules put in place, as in terms of here's all the additional actions you can do, boom, 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 boom. It just seems a little too fiddly, and I wasn't quite interested in any of that. And I mean, most of it is just, hey, by the way, the official rule books have also come up with plenty of shit you can already do, which is a funny acknowledgement that this section is kind of unnecessary, because there's already a lot of rules in place from between Xanathar's, a player's handbook, and the Dungeon Master's Guide. So if you've got those official books, and most likely you do if you're on the DM's Guild, then you really probably don't need very many supplemental DM's rules like these. Monsters and Modifiers is a weird way of adding like Diablo-style prefixes and suffixes to creatures, which is something that works well in that specific action RPG genre that helps modify random monsters, because you're only fighting, they need to use the same models basically over and over and over again. And how do you make that more interesting is you're designed to go through the same things over and over and over again. Well, you add, this is a monster that can do all these different abilities. This takes that concept into D&D, which I don't think is needed or wanted necessarily at all, unless you are for some reason fighting just hordes of, I don't know, you want to introduce different kinds of goblins and make those. It seems like a lot of extra work for a DM to make individual monsters individually different, and especially some of them are way too much. I mean, the creature can use an additional reaction per round, or it can seductive wiles, provoking an opposed charisma check. Let's see, one of them, when it takes damage, roll in the wild magic surge table. I could see maybe some kind of boss monster you could add some of these to, but again, this feels just a little, and I'm not going to put this one as a con like I am the other one, but I don't know. This doesn't seem necessary, because this D&D is not a Diablo-style game. I guess you could make it be one if you wanted it to, but I feel like you're not fighting in combat that often enough of the same creature to make these necessary, although it's not necessarily a terrible idea. I think it's an interesting idea. It's not one that I would personally use, I don't believe. We do get some examples of stat blocks, including how to use the modifiers, which I do like the way it's color-coded and shown exactly how that works out. I'm more interested in just seeing how these creatures were built, which is nice. And the fact that these are all specifically player races and subclasses added, from the book itself into actual stat blocks, which is really neat. Again, I love this artwork. I don't know if this is preview art or if this is final art. I'm assuming it's preview art, but even then, it's really freaking good, and I love it to death. I I would love to be a fly on the wall of the conversation where the designer told the artist, "Hey, can you draw me an alluring were octopus?" And god damn it, if that is not an alluring were octopus, like it is, like that's perfect. That is exactly what I would picture. Good job. Whoever drew this art is they nailed it. They freaking nailed it. I love it. Including the cocky were shark. That is a cocky ass were shark. I love the giant shark tail too. Just really great. Oh, the skittish were squid. This art is so good. I cannot stress that enough. It really makes this whole compendium just so much better. I mean, the whole actual presentation, it's very, well edited, well detailed and all that, but the art just really goes above and beyond what I was expecting. Just absolutely fantastic. I do love the few legendary enemies we get. These are boss creatures that there's only 3 of them, but they all do a good job of taking different aspects of, and again, like the stat blocks we just had, of races and subclasses, races and characters that were introduced in the book itself into giant, legendary, powerful creatures. One of this is kind of a Joker style, villainous clown, which seems like, hey, we should definitely have one of those, but seems suitably creepy and interesting, and you get a little bit of backstory about that, how some clowns can go down the twisted path and be very dark and evil, as we all know in society that there's plenty of evil clown archetypes in our entertainment media. There's an evil gnoll, which, gnolls are already pretty evil. In fact, you have to be a specifically tempered gnoll to be a player race gnoll. Kind of the same way that you are a half-orc. You've always got that pull for bloodlust. And the Nightmare Army, which finally reveals the truth about the author, Sir House, is a were-raven who escaped from Barovia and went through this whole process of trying to fight back against the evil of Barovia, ended up copying himself over into a simulacra of different clones of himself called the Nightmare Army, which is a crazy cool way of tying this all together. And then at the very end, there's a letter written from one of these clones to Sir House's daughter as a way of saying, yes, the Sir House who wrote it is merely an echo of the Sir House you knew. It's like, holy crap. It's like if Xanathar's actually told a story from beginning to end. I was really blown away by it. It's not much, but it's just a little bit that really ties together this whole thing and makes it into this little story that's told at the beginning versus at the end. There was another artwork, and it you'd think this is just a plague doctor mask, and in fact he's a were-raven that rides this mask to hide the fact that he's a were-raven. So I think that's really, really cool, clever idea. I like that a lot. It adds a nice bit of personality. I think every supplemental book could take advantage of having that kind of personal touch, which is a Xanathar's, a Valo's, a Mordenkainen's. Obviously Wizards is doing it and doing it very well, and I think that can be good inspiration for others to do that kind of thing, where they, instead of writing it very dryly, they write it from the perspective of an actual in-universe character, and then you get these kind of, cutaway descriptive texts that's flavorful from that character. And that makes it just a really fun read for anybody reading it, even if they're not the ones using that material. So that's really fun, and I like to see that. So big plus on that. All right, so final pros and cons. That was 97 pages, folks. For the Book of House. Pros. You get 5 new subclasses and 4 player races, including a very detailed explanation of the Klon race, along with 5 Klon-specific backgrounds. So just a ton of really good content. Pro, fantastic, colorful, and plentiful character artwork throughout the entire document. If you don't know already, I really, really, really enjoyed the art. Pros, new lycanthrope options and rules for PC lycanthropes. I think they are very well done. I like that extra attention was given on how to actually balance lycanthropy for player characters, and I think the new options, including were squids and were sharks and were wasps, are all pretty cool and treated with the same sincerity that the other ones are. Pros, I enjoyed all the new magic items. 10 new magic items, each with their own art. They're all very well done. Pro, 3 interesting boss monsters based on the new races and new character in the terms of Sir House, which is cool. Actually, I guess Were-Raven's kind of a new one, so that counts. And Pro, you can purchase any of the races or subclass options separately a la carte. So one of my cons when I went into this originally was that this is very good, but unfortunately you've got to buy the whole package, and you might not want all of these things that are kind of only connected because this one character just deems it so. But then I saw, actually you can purchase all of these things separately, except for some of them, and I'll get to that in a second. Cons, the new combat actions feel overly fiddly for 5e. I wasn't too interested in any of the kind of DM side rules. Cons, the Wizard Light Sorcerer subclass is pretty lame. Sorry, just think it is. And con, you cannot purchase the Lycanthrope content separately. And I think it's really, really good content and deserves to be its own separate spin-off purchase in case folks are only interested in the lycanthropy stuff and not necessarily a race on clowns and everything, even though the clown race is really well done. Final verdict. The Book of House presents silly concepts like a race of clowns, butler bodyguards, and culinary war chefs, and presents them with serious attention to detail, well thought out rules, and lovely artwork. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson, and you can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.